Good morning, everyone. We come together today seeking a reality beyond our narrow selves, a reality that binds us in compassion, love, and understanding to other human beings, and to the interdependent web of all living things. May our hearts and minds be opened to the power and the insight that weave together the scattered threads of our experiences and help us remember the wholeness of which we all are a part. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. I'm Smiley, and I will be your less nervous worship associate this morning. This is a welcoming congregation, and we're always working on how to better welcome and care for one another. If this is your first time here, we're glad you come. And whoever you are, we accept you on the right page. We welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Huichin, the unceded territory of the Choyeño-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we continue to benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land, and we acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in right relation with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. Let us kindle our chalice flame with these words by Julianne Leap. We seek our place in the world and the answers to our heart's deep questions. And we seek, may our hearts be open to unexpected answers. May the light of our chalice remind us that this is a community of warmth, of wisdom, and welcoming of multiple truths. The four candles of resistance. We also pause to remind ourselves of some of the foundations of resilience. I think I said four candles of resistance. I meant resilience. With Reverend Michelle, we light a candle of courage, a candle of acts of service, a candle of fellowship, and a candle of hope. May we find and cultivate these foundations of resilience in ourselves and in one another.
This morning also marks the second Sunday in the season of Advent. In the Christian tradition, Advent is the beginning of the church year, recognizing the transforming power of God in the world and looking forward to the birth of Jesus and the celebration of spiritual light. Christianity is not alone in celebrating light at this time of year. Hanukkah, solstice, and Kwanzaa all involve candles, fire, and lights as part of their celebrations. Each week until Christmas, we light a new candle on our Advent wreath. The circle the candles are set in reminds us of the eternal cycle of all life without beginning or end. And the candles remind us that we are each called to emit our glow amid the pain and suffering facing our world. The light of Advent grows brighter and brighter, guiding us toward personal peace, shared joy, and more love. This morning, we light the second candle. We light this candle as a symbol of our longing for peace. We bring our hope into the world when we practice peacemaking. Our caring community aspires to be a source of freedom from violence and exclusion. May we become the ones we have been waiting for, to use June Jordan's words. Together, may we strive to create a lasting peace.
Good morning. It's time to sing, and the first hymn is the Meditation on Breathing. It's number 1009 in your teal hymnal. There are three parts to this. There's the main melody, there's a drone, and there's a descant. And I'm going to ask three of our singers to demonstrate each one of those. So, Megan, would you sing for us the melody?
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
You're always welcome to sing that part. I'm going to ask if Rod would sing the drone part. And Phil as well. Here we go.
Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
Nice drone. And now the descant part, Marcel will sing for us.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
So please rise in body, in spirit, and join in singing any or all of those parts that you like. We'll go through it a few times.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Please join me in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
Want that lower? Okay.
Hello, my name is Naomi, and I'd like to remind you about the annual food drive that is going on right now. Every year, UUCB collects food and money to help people in our community. We are collecting for the Richmond Emergency Food Pantry. This pantry is important because it helps provide food for 300 families every week. Food donations can be left out in the atrium, or you can donate online to the UUCB website. Just don't forget to write food drive in the notes section. We are trying to beat our numbers from last year, which was 1,000 pounds of food and $3,600. Your last chance to contribute is next Sunday, December 11th. Thank you for considering a contribution to this important event led by UUCB Youth. The Youth and Children's Chorus has created some rhythmic reminders to help you know what to buy when you're at the store.
Thank you, Naomi. First, I just want to say I have 3 members of YCC out sick today, so there's a lot of children ill, and I hope you will join me in sending them healing thoughts. So we're going to tell you these rhythmic mnemonic devices, and you can keep a beat with us, a quiet beat, not too loud, and don't speed up. And when you feel like you know the rhythm, you can join in with us. So the most important thing for them to remember, guys, do you want to take your masks off? And you want to make sure, Stella and Vivian, you're close to the mic. Stella, you can move forward a little. Thank you. And the most important thing is that they remember there's a food drive, right? So, food drive. Bring your food to the food drive. Food drive. Bring your food to the food drive. Oh, you guys sound great. That's wonderful. All right, Vivian, what's first? Rice. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Rice.
Rice. Yes, that's it. What's next, Stella?
Peanut butter. Peanut butter.
Peanut butter. Peanut butter. Peanut butter. Peanut butter. Thank you, Stella. Okay, Naomi. With me? You want to do it with me? 1, 2, 3. Old-fashioned, old-fashioned, old-fashioned oatmeal.
Old-fashioned, old-fashioned, old-fashioned oatmeal. Old-fashioned, old-fashioned, old-fashioned oatmeal. Old-fashioned, old-fashioned oatmeal.
Those are good. All right, you ready for olive oil? Yeah. All right, 1, 2, 3. Olive, olive, oil, oil.
Olive, olive, oil, oil.
Olive, olive, oil, oil. Olive, olive, oil. Olive, olive, oil, oil. Olive, olive, oil. Guys, that sounds great. Do you think you'll be able to remember? There's other items on the list too, so you don't have to bring one of the ones that we reminded you of, but if you forget, just think back to this morning and the nice rhythms that the YCC gave you. Thanks, everyone.
If you are young of body or young of spirit, you are welcome to join me on the stairs for our story. And there's no pictures this time, I'm going to just tell you. But we can all sit here together and do it anyway. Does this work? Okay. It's so nice to see all of you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So we are going to read the story of the giving tree. And better? Great. All right. So this is the story of the giving tree by Shel Silverstein. Once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy. Every day the boy would come and he would gather her leaves and make them into crowns and play king of the forest. He would climb up her trunk and swing from her branches and eat apples. And they would play hide and go seek. And when he was tired, he would sleep in her shade. The boy loved the tree very much, and the tree was happy. But time went by and the boy grew older. The tree was often alone. The one day the boy came to the tree, and the tree said, "Come, boy, come and climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and eat apples and play in my shade and be happy." "I am too big to climb and play," said the boy. "I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money. Can you give me money?" "I'm sorry," said the tree, "but I have no money. I have only leaves and apples. Take my apples and sell them in the city. Then you will have money and you will be happy." And so the boy climbed up the tree and gathered her apples and carried them away, and the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and the tree was sad. Then one day he came back, and the tree shook with joy. "Come, boy, come, climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and be happy." "I'm too busy to climb trees," said the boy. "I want a house to keep me warm. I want a wife and children, and so I need a house. Can you give me a house?" "I have a question. Does everybody live in a house?"
Yes.
Does everybody live in a house?
Yes.
Not everybody, right? Some of us live in apartments, and some people don't have places to live, right?
Yeah, some of us just have to live on the street.
Sometimes people do, and that's very sad. Yeah, so we don't all have houses. That's interesting. "I have no house," she replied. "The forest is my house, but you may cut off my branches and build a house. Then you will be happy." And so the boy cut off her branches and carried them away to build his house. And the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time. When he came back, the tree was so happy that she could hardly speak. "Come, boy," she whispered. Come and play." "I am too old and sad to play," said the boy. "I want a boat that will take me far away from here. Can you give me a boat?" "Cut down my trunk and make a boat," said the tree. Then you can go away and you can sail and you can be happy." And so the boy cut down her trunk, made a boat, and sailed away. And the tree was happy. Well, not really. And after a long time, the boy came back again. "I'm sorry, boy," said the tree, "but I have nothing left to give you. My apples are gone." "My teeth are too weak for apples," said the boy. "My branches are gone. You cannot swing on them." "I'm too old to swing on branches," said the boy. "My trunk is gone. You cannot climb." I'm too tired to climb, said the boy. I'm sorry, said the tree. I wish that I could give you something, but I have nothing left. I'm just an old stump. I don't need very much now, said the boy. Just a quiet place to sit and rest. I am very tired. Well, said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could, an old stump is good for sitting and resting. Come sit down. Sit down and rest. And the boy did. And the tree was happy. Do we like this story?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. What do we like about the story?
I like that the tree is so generous.
The tree is very generous, that's true.
I like that the tree gives him what he wants.
Right, so the tree is doing a lot of giving and being kind and generous. That's wonderful. What do you think?
I like everything about things.
You do. That's great.
I
I see someone shaking their head. Why don't you like the story?
Because it's sad that the tree's getting all stuff left behind and the boy's not being so kind to her.
Yeah, that's true. The tree gives a lot, right? But the boy doesn't really. Did the boy ever say thank you? I don't think he said thank you. Did you hear a thank you?
No.
I didn't either. So that's something to think about, right? Because this is the holiday season and we're buying a lot of stuff and doing a lot of stuff, but sometimes we don't take time to really be grateful for what we have. So I hope we remember that this season.
Because he didn't say thank you.
Yeah, that's true. So this holiday season, I hope that we all are so thankful for everything that we receive and we take time to say thank you and have gratitude and truly have a wonderful holiday season. All right, thank you. Yes.
As the children go off to their classes, please sing From You I Receive, number 402. The choir is going to sing The Carol of the Bells by the most famous of Ukrainian composers, and it's probably the most famous Ukrainian piece. And it's interesting, it's the way it's tied in with Ukrainian independence. About 100 years ago, when Ukraine became an independent country after the fall of the Romanovs, they organized some tours, and one of the tours, cultural tours, was to have a choir come to America, and they sang the Carol of the Bells in New York. And they're actually doing an anniversary, they did just, I think, a night or two ago, an anniversary performance of that. And it's an old, the composition's based on an old Ukrainian folk melody. It's become very popular in America, at least as, everybody knows it seems like, with English words, which is what we're going to sing. The original words in Ukrainian are not about Christmas at all. They're just about this wonderful feeling of gratitude. So here we are, the Carol of the Bells.
One sings to hear words of good cheer from everywhere, fill the year. Oh, how they found praise, just the sound Lord of the and telling they tell. Hail they ring, while people sing songs of good cheer. Christmas is here. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. One seems to hear words of good cheer from everywhere filling the air. Oh, how they pound, praising the sound, Lord, and then telling the tale. Gaily they ring while people sing songs of good cheer. Christmas is here. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding ding dong.
Ding dong, ding dong.
Let us now enter a quiet time in the midst of our service, a time to find the still place within us, a time to focus in on that place and listen to hear what may be speaking. We lift up and hold the joys and sorrows, the cares and concerns and challenges that we may each be facing. We lift these up into the embrace of our community, and I especially lift up all of those who have faced the direct challenge of or whose loved ones have faced the challenge of AIDS, as this past week held World AIDS Day, a time to specifically open our eyes and be aware of that. Let us all join in a moment of silence. Let us come now into a time of meditation. If you wish to adjust your position in your seat, reach your feet to the floor if that is comfortable for you, your body resting onto the seat that is holding you. If you wish, hold your hands gently open, palms up, your eyelids relaxed, maybe all the way closed, maybe half closed, your breathing soft and easy. Let us join in this guided visualization. The day has been muted and gray, sun hidden behind a scrim of clouds so diffused they seem like the underside of a gauze canvas draped over our heads across the sky. The air, neither cold nor warm, is damp against your skin. You find yourself near a grove of pine trees, loblollies and larches, hemlocks and Austrian pines standing off to the side, slightly removed from the path that you find yourself on. The direction you're heading, the someplace else you're supposed to be. Step off that path for a few minutes. Find a spot under one of the trees. Imagine yourself sitting there and settling in. Notice the patterns in the bark of the branches. Furrowed and flaky, bark peels away incrementally from the limbs, like a chrysalis rupturing as new life expands and cracks its protective shell. The needles, dark green and stiff in mid-stretch, are each tipped with a bead of moisture. Drops of water not yet dense enough to free fall to the earth. As your gaze softens and sharpens, you notice droplets of water are also clinging to the underside of the branches. The air around you feels still, still enough to maybe even hear the water collecting on the trees. Still enough for you to hear the infinitesimally small sound of a wafer of bark lifting another micron of itself away from the trunk. Inside you, there is a chrysalis ready to expand and cracked open, sheltering possibilities and potential, glistening with promises. Soften your gaze to yourself. What do you see? What is the newness that has taken root in you? In the distance, you hear whispers of wind as it sighs towards your tree. In an instant, you are showered with those tiny beads of water twirling free from their embrace of the tree. The branches lightly flex themselves in the breeze and settle back into place, open, receptive to whatever may next collect along their ridges and grooves. A nuthatch, intently focused and goal-oriented, flits to a spot high on the tree trunk and starts nosing around. A small shard of bark peels off and gently falls to your feet. Now, take in a deep breath and release it. Take another, open your eyes, bring your attention back to your feet on the ground, your body resting easily against the back of the pew, your hands open. Come back into this space and this time.
A few years ago, in need of a place to live, I went to see an apartment. After showing me the space, the landlord took me outside to the porch and told me that he'd welcome me as a tenant. I have a couple of rules, he advised. No dogs, that's the first one, and the laundry room is only for tenants, and friends and guests are not welcome. I nodded my agreement. As he spoke, a car parked at the curb and a woman got out. That's the girlfriend of someone who lives on the 3rd floor, commented the landlord. We watched as she opened the car's back door and removed a heaping laundry basket and a small dog. The woman, the dog, and her laundry all entered the building, even though it had just been explained to me that the two of them were not allowed. The landlord squirmed, making no move to enforce his own rules. I get it. I do. I get both sides of this squirmy situation. It's a hassle to go to a laundromat and leave your sweet fur baby at home. And we all avoid conflict a little or a lot. I hate to be a goody-goody, but actually I am a goody-goody. But I feel disoriented when in a new place or situation and I can't figure out whether the rules are real or imaginary. I don't just mean masks required stores that don't enforce the mask rule. I also mean other mixed messages when a boundary is accompanied by its simultaneous breaking. Like when I visited an out-of-town gym right before the lockdown, and while I was working out, I noticed that underneath a sign that said, "No food," someone had placed a plate of cookies. Boundaries can be uncomfortable. Upholding boundaries, even more uncomfortable. On the other hand, belonging to an apartment building, a gym, a community, a congregation, doesn't mean you can do anything you want. So if boundaries are important enough for you to establish, then I figure you'd best prepare yourselves to name it out loud when someone violates it, even when cute dogs and cookies are involved. That accountability is not inherently unkind. If anything, it's an expression of care for everyone else in the picture, because a system, a people, a community is only as healthy as the boundaries it agrees to keep.
Another story. I have another story, there we go, about a tree for you. This one's by Jerry Wright. Once there was a boy who really enjoyed a tree. He enjoyed the roughness of its bark when he climbed it. He enjoyed the springiness of its branches when he swung on them. He enjoyed the crackle, the smell, and the pillowy feeling of leaves when he gathered them in a big pile and jumped in them in the fall of the year. He enjoyed the crunch and tart taste of its apples when he bit into the ripe fruit. And when the sun was hot, he enjoyed sitting in its shade, leaning against its sturdy trunk, thinking about all the things he hoped to do and have as he grew older. The tree enjoyed the boy, too. She enjoyed watching him grow stronger, able to do more things. She enjoyed his company. She enjoyed being useful. But there came a long time when the boy stayed away. Then one day he returned and said to the tree, "I need some money." And the tree said, "Well, money doesn't grow on trees, but apples do. You're welcome to gather my apples and sell them for money." The tree was delighted to have the boy climbing about gathering the apples she'd grown. She enjoyed his company and enjoyed feeling useful. But then the boy stayed away for a long time again. One bright sunny day, the tree saw him coming towards her, older now, a young man, and she was so happy. She really enjoyed his company. She enjoyed he was bigger and looked stronger than when she'd seen him last. "I want a house," he told the tree, "a house to live in and raise a family. Would you give me your wood?" "I will give you a few of my branches," she said, "and you may ask my neighbors for some of theirs, but if I gave you all of my branches, I'd have nothing to support my leaves. Without leaves to turn sunlight and water into food, I would die. But as long as you only take a few of my limbs, I can grow others, so you're welcome to a few of them." The young man thanked the tree, heard that, yes, and chose a few of her branches to make into lumber for his house. He also asked her neighbors, who gave him a few branches here and there until he had enough. Then he built his house and enjoyed it and was gone for several years again, until one day the tree recognized him coming towards her, a man in his middle years, looking healthy and having good energy. And he said to the tree, "I've been thinking that I'd like to have a boat to sail on the lake, and I'd like to have your trunk to use for the hull." Now, the tree liked the man very much, had liked him since he was a small boy, climbing her trunk and diving into piles of her leaves. But she liked herself, too. And she said, "I like you a lot. I've enjoyed you for years, but I have good reasons to say no to your request. First of all, if I gave you my trunk, I'd die. And while I like to give of myself and feel useful, I know better than to give all of myself away. Secondly, I've noticed you only come around when you want something. Other than that, I never see you. Still, that doesn't mean you can't have a boat. You don't have to use wood. Fiberglass. Fiberglass makes excellent boats. Build yourself a boat of fiberglass and come visit me from time to time." At first, the man was not happy with her response. Always before, she'd at least given him some of what he had asked for. But she was right. He did only come when he wanted something, and fiberglass was a perfectly good material for building a boat. The more he thought about it, he realized that at first, he and the tree had been giving each other something. But as time had gone by, the tree had been doing almost all of the giving, and he had been doing almost all of the taking. He decided to take his children to play in, on, and around the tree. He also bought some seedlings and showed his children how to plant them, so the seedlings would grow up to keep the tree company. Like all living things, the tree grew older, and finally she died. And the keepers of the forest cut her down, leaving only her stump. The man grew older too and returned to the tree one day, only to discover there was nothing left of her but the stump. She could offer no shade to sit in, no sturdy trunk to lean against, only her stump to sit on, and so he sat. He thanked her for being there when he was a boy, allowing her to climb her sturdy trunk, bounce on her springy branches, eat her crisp, tart apples, and to pounce into piles of her fallen leaves. He thanked her for the shade she had provided, for being there to lean on when he just wanted a place to think thoughts and dream dreams. He thanked her, too, for the limbs she spared for helping him build his house. And then, as he thought some more, he thanked her most of all for setting limits and saying no, for only allowing him to have some of her limbs, not so much he would have damaged her, and for telling him no when he wanted her trunk. He also thanked her for pointing out he had fallen into the habit of thinking only of himself. He thought a long time. When it came time for the old man to go, he patted the stump and said, "Thank you for liking yourself as well as you liked me. I think that liking yourself enough to tell me no was the best gift you ever gave." And now we'll sing our responsive song one more time. Wasn't that story so much better? Yeah. So how spiritually mature would you say that you are? It's one of a bunch of different kinds of maturity, because we've got chronological maturity, physical maturity, emotional maturity, intellectual maturity, social maturity, philosophical maturity, and spiritual maturity. This is an interesting way to think about spiritual growth, instead of just the markers on one's spiritual journey. It's thinking about what are the parts of being able to call oneself spiritually mature, or at least working on it. There are some progressions that are published, like James Fowler's Stages of Faith, that show the different stages from infant to intuitive to mythical literal to conventional and eventually all the way to enlightenment. Now, while interesting though, that's a progression that's tied to chronological age, especially earlier on, and doesn't really give much of a roadmap for adult spiritual growth and development. So there are a lot of other measures of spiritual maturity. You can find them online. Lists of, if you're spiritually mature, you'd be really good at these things. When I heard about these lists of different elements, I got excited. I started Google searching them, of course. I'm a geek for lists and schemes and stuff like that. UU minister Kendall Gibbons, who's a humanist as well, created a list that's pretty conducive to UUs, and it was further developed by Unity Consulting, who put together a survey with some of the pieces. This list of spiritual maturity includes things like openness to astonishment and wonder. By the way, wonder's the monthly theme for December. Submission and surrender, accepting confusion and ambiguity, being in the presence of someone else's pain without needing to fix it, awareness and acceptance of the reality of our own deaths. All sorts of great stuff like that. Pretty mature-sounding stuff, right? Okay, it does remind me of how far I really need to go also. Anybody with me on that? So how spiritually mature are you? You know what Kendall Gibbons lists very first on her list? Boundaries. She calls it sophrosine, a Greek word which she describes as self-awareness in the service of intention, having good boundaries and remembering what you want. Boundaries and how they impact our actions are a key part of being spiritually mature. So what do I mean by boundaries? I'm sure you have some answers in your head. Today I'm mostly talking about relational boundaries, like you just heard in the 2 stories about the trees and in about the apartment manager. The ability to say yes and say no, defining oneself in relationship with others, and knowing what responsibility you would like to take on as your own and what responsibility is more rightly someone else's. This is about having our own distinct selves, about intention and about accountability. That's not a fun word either, is it? At least not enforcing it. For some folks, boundaries are easier to hold in their lives, and for others, it can be more difficult. I'm not going to delve into the reasons for that, that's beyond my expertise, but there's a good deal of difference with how different folks hold their boundaries, and it can vary by circumstance also. The giving tree, she had trouble with boundaries, did she not? Actually, I don't think she had any boundaries, at least not in her relationship with the boy. I have to admit, I detest that story. Were any of you horrified when you heard it start to be read in worship? I detest that story of how the tree never says no, and except for the very beginning, the boy never says anything in return and never says thank you. The tree doesn't have any sense of herself aside from the boy. Even when he just moves on with his life, she just stands there lonely and wishes for him to come back because that's how she's defined her happiness. What kind of a life is that? He comes back and will never do what they enjoy doing together. He always seems to have some sort of excuse. Asks for things and she gives them, her apples, her branches, then the ultimate sacrifice of her trunk for his boat. I think the only moment with a glimmer of hope in that original story was as he carted away her trunk, and it read, "And the tree was happy, but not really." She finally achieved a little bit of self-awareness, but at that point in the story, it was too late. What I want to claim today is that boundaries help not only ourselves, but they also influence the nature of our relationships too. Shame researcher Brene Brown, who I know I've mentioned before, says one of the greatest and least discussed barriers to compassionate practice is the fear of setting boundaries and holding people accountable. I'll say that again, one of the greatest and least discussed barriers to compassionate practice is the fear of setting boundaries and holding others accountable. The first person that having better boundaries helps us to be compassionate with, though, is ourselves. This was one of the big lessons in the retelling of the giving tree, that second version, where the tree's motivation for saying no was that she liked herself, too. While she really liked giving of herself, a sentiment many of us can relate to, the tree also prioritized her own needs. One of my mentors, the Reverend Kay Jorgensen, who was one of the founders of the Faithful Fools Street Ministry in San Francisco, served in a church for a while before she moved her ministry onto the streets. One day when I was at the Fool's Court, that's the name of the building, a good-sized, rather densely packed box arrived. Now, Kay knew what was in it and immediately got excited. The rest of us are like, what? What? We wrestled the contents out of the box and found a 4-foot-tall, red-colored creation of the word yes. A 4-foot-tall yes. Kay had it on the wall of her church, this great big yes. In a culture with a lot of no's and with theologies where our members come from with even more no's and even more shame and guilt, she explained, she wanted to be a church that answers with an affirmative yes. Now, that's fabulously a sermon for another day, and you might be wondering why I'm bringing up a giant red yes when we're talking about boundaries and saying no. When we're saying no to some request, or saying no to taking on someone else's responsibility, or saying no to something not in line with our values, what we're doing is saying yes to ourselves. That's why I want to talk about a great big 4-foot-tall red yes. Saying no allows us to be compassionate to ourselves. Saying no to someone else or something else is saying yes to ourselves. And boundaries not only enable us to be compassionate to ourselves, they also help us be compassionate with others. It is difficult, if not downright impossible, to be compassionate to someone else when they're hurting us or taking advantage of us. This is where that topic of accountability comes in. And the opposite of accountability is blame. Blaming someone else, avoiding responsibility are so easy. Who's with me on that? Yes, seductive too. I remember once when I had completely broken my cell phone. I'd already dropped it a number of times, somehow got lucky that it had never gotten more than a few dings. But this day, I wasn't. I had a big stack of things in my hands, and my phone, I'm forgetting the adjective, my phone just sitting on top of the stack. Here I am moving fast, and it flew off onto the pavement of the road, and I knew that was it. The screen was completely shattered, and I wanted to blame someone. I wanted to blame the bride and groom whose wedding I was at, the project that was the source of all the stuff I was carrying, someone I had talked to that day, anybody, not myself though. But this one was 100% entirely, completely, utterly, totally my fault. And I had to acknowledge that as much as I would have liked to avoid responsibility and, cast my negative feelings elsewhere. We live in a blame culture. That's the easy road, both in a larger sense and in our interpersonal cultures and interpersonal relationships. We want to know whose fault it is. What's the first question that so often gets asked when you hear about a car accident? Whose fault is it? It's so much easier to point fingers and think insults than it is to consider who is accountable, everyone who is accountable, and to get our own place in that accountability. I saw blame get in the way of caring when I was a hospital chaplain. What did you do to cause the situation that brought you in? It got in the way of every part of the relationship. The biggest culprits were kids' injuries. I'd look at the parents or guardians and the blame would be going. Lung cancer, liver failure, HIV, little bits of blame surfacing in all of these places. After a good bit of time working on the transplant floor, I realized I was carrying around that blame, this little niggling voice in the back of my head that they had done something to cause their organ failure. And how could I be fully present and compassionate with that running around in my head? The opposite of this blaming and this judging and this anger, the opposite of it is where we need to turn. Compassion, being kinder but firmer, blaming less, having respect for our own boundaries. Blame is the opposite of accountability. It's the opposite of having intentional boundaries. And it comes from not acknowledging our own values and our own feelings. Blame blocks compassion. I remember sitting down one day with Rebecca Parker, fabulous UU theologian and the reason that I went to Star King here in Berkeley. I remember sitting down with her one time and she pushed me to name why it was that some things could be right and others wrong. To me, it came down to boundaries. There are boundaries about what's right and what's just, and when those are crossed, then we've crossed into the territory of wrong. It isn't just reacting with anger, though. These boundaries enable us to act in solidarity from a place of love and compassion. And that then prompts action. That's hopefully not only necessary, but maybe sustainable as well, because we found some sustainable underpinnings for it. Boundaries enable us to be compassionate with ourselves, with others, and they call on us to act with compassion. But okay, that doesn't mean it's easy. And not only might we resist naming them ourselves, but others typically resist them when we enforce them. In that second telling of the giving tree, when she does exert her boundaries, the boy, I imagine, stomped off. He did not like it one bit. And in the story that Smiley shared, the apartment manager awkwardly didn't want to enforce the boundaries either. What it might do for the girlfriend walking in, that tenant, the new tenant, and it was just darn awkward feeling. There's reality. Boundaries don't necessarily come easy. And even if they were easier last time, it doesn't mean in this context they'll be easy again. What we have to do, though, is practice. We have to practice our boundaries, the little ones and the big ones. We have to practice so that we're constantly reminding ourselves of them and constantly affirming that we can do this for ourselves. I bet it took the tree a lot to be able to turn around the way that she interacted with the boy. She might have been afraid of disappointing him. Might be afraid he would never come back. Afraid of not ever coming back. Afraid of that source of happiness leaving her forever. But she psyched herself up and she did it. I like you a lot, she said. I've enjoyed you for years, but I have good reasons to say no to your request. If I gave you my trunk, I would die. And while I like to give of myself and feel useful, I know better than to give myself away entirely. And in the end, and he finally realized it, her having boundaries was the greatest gift she could have possibly given him. So what do you need to practice your boundaries? How can you find ways to say yes to yourself? Find ways to build more intention into your life. It's not easy, but it's something each of us needs and something each of our relationships needs. Having good boundaries opens up new avenues and springs of compassion in yourself and towards yourself. Boundaries and intention make compassion possible because saying no is saying I love you to yourself. May it be so.
The best things in life are free, but you can give them to the birds and bees. Now give me money. That's what I want. That's what I want. What I want. I have no idea why I'm compelled to sing that song. But at this point in our service, we invite you to make an offering. With our offering, each of us has the opportunity to recommit to making UUCB a strong and vibrant community. For now, we're conducting the offering in the sanctuary without passing the plate. Instead, you can either give electronically, or you can take a donation envelope from the back of the pew in front of you and place it into the donation box, which sits just outside, beside the fountain out in the atrium. We support our wonderful Good Neighbor organizations through our plate offerings, and each week half of our plate offering is shared with a Good Neighbor organization. It's recommended by our Social Justice Council. And we're grateful that you've continued to practice generosity with our good neighbors through these very hard times. And this month, our good neighbor is the Urban Tilth of Richmond, California, and Doria Robinson, its executive director, is here today, and she's going to speak to us about this important work. Ms. Robinson, if you would like to step forward, please.
Hello, everybody. I just first wanted to say thank you for inviting me to the service. It's been really amazing and warm and really uplifting. And yeah, I've never actually been to a Universalist service before, so thank you. And then I just wanted to say Urban Tilth has been the love of my life for the last 16 years. I've been executive director here. I started as a volunteer. Urban Tilth grows food in the city. We transform vacant lots into gardens, farms, grow food with young people and other people from the community. So every year, over 3,000 people come through to volunteer, and we actually hire and employ young people and other people to help us run our food distribution and growing programs. So we feed over 500 families every week, fresh boxes of fruits and vegetables from our farms and gardens, as well as 10 partner farms that we work with. They're Black, Indigenous, Latino farmers who have small, sustainable operations within 100 miles of Richmond, kind of keeping with our whole effort to actually make this sustainable local food system and really engage young people from this community in making something like that happen. We teach at Richmond High School, we teach at Berkeley Elementary School, 17 classes a week there. We serve VeggieRx prescriptions with doctors at lifelong medical centers so people with chronic disease can get a prescription of fresh fruits and vegetables. So much work that we do is all about inspiring people from this community, a community with so much negative impact, to have the power and the tools and the information they need to make positive, productive change, to make the kind of change that helps everyone thrive. So your contributions will help us keep feeding people, keep training and employing young people. We have a new program that's going to be starting next year, installing water conservation in low-income houses, so laundry to landscape systems, gray water systems, things like that. I just wanted to thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doria. And now our offertory.
Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. So they say the subsequent fall was inevitable. They never stood a chance, they were written that way. Innocent victims of their story. Like Romeo and Juliet, 'twas written in the stars before they even met. That love and fate and a touch of stupidity would rob them of the hope of living happily. The endings are often a little bit gory. I wonder why they didn't just change their story. We're told we have to do what we're told, but surely sometimes you have to be a little bit naughty. Just because you find that life's not fair, it doesn't mean that you just have to grin and bear it. If you only take it on the chin and wear it, nothing will change. Even if you're little, you can do a lot. You mustn't let a little thing like little stop you. If you sit around and let them get on top, you might as well be saying you think that it's okay, and that's not right. Cinderella in the cellar didn't have to do much as far as I can tell. Her godmother was 2/3 fairy. Suddenly her lot was a lot less scary. But what if you haven't got a fairy to fix it? Sometimes you have to make a little bit of mischief. Just because you find that life's not fair, it doesn't mean that you just have to grin and bear it. If you always take it on the chin and wear it, nothing will change. Even if you're little, you can do a lot. You mustn't let a little thing like little stop you. If you sit around and let them get on top, you might as well be saying you think that it's okay, and that's not right. And if it's not right, you have to put it right. In the slip of a bolt, there's a tiny revolt. The seeds of a war in the creak of a floorboard. A storm can begin with a flap of a wing. The tiniest mite packs the mightiest sting. Every day starts with the tick of a clock. All mistakes start with the click of a lock. If you're stuck in your story and want to get out, you don't have to cry, you don't have to shout, 'cause if you're little, you can do a lot. You mustn't let a little thing like little stop you. If you sit around and let them get on top, you won't change a thing. Just because you find that life's not fair, it doesn't mean that you just have to grin and bear it. If you always take it on the chin and wear it, you might as well be saying you think that it's okay, and that's not right. And if it's not right, you have to put it right. But nobody else is gonna put it right for me. Nobody but me is gonna change my story. Sometimes you have to be a little bit naughty.
Please join me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service.
All right, we got a lot of stuff happening at the church right now. Pay attention to announcements in the week ahead and elsewhere for dates about the many holiday things happening here. We've got Messiah. The Messiah Sing-Along is back on the 18th. And then there's Winter Solstice service. There's the 2 traditional Christmas Eve services. And guess what day of the week Christmas is on this year? A Sunday. We'll be here for that too. Remember to vote for next year's Good Neighbor recipients. The link went out in the discuss list and maybe in the week ahead also. The link is out there. Remember to vote. You need to vote by the end of today if you want your vote to be taken into account for deciding who next year's recipients will be. And lastly, the holiday fair. As many of you saw on your way in, the holiday fair is here. Get a head start on your holiday shopping after the service today and check out many silent auction items too. The holiday fair itself is just this week. The silent auctions will be back next Sunday as well. All right, you got all of it? All right, let's finish out singing. Please rise in body or in spirit. How could anyone? It's in the Teal hymnal, number 1053, and the words will be on screen. How could anyone tell you you were anything less than beautiful, than amazing, than whole? And how could we tell ourselves anything like that too? May you go from this place remembering the inherent awesomeness of each and every one of us, an awesomeness that deserves to be affirmed with our yeses and with our nos. May you have a blessed week.